This video is brought to you by Squarespace, the all-in-one platform to build a beautiful online presence and run your business. Have you ever looked at the word donut and thought, dough, I understand, but why nut? Well, today we're going to be designing doughnuts, but instead of dough, we're going to be replacing them with things like pig, earth, pea. No, not that pea. With our prompts ready to draw, let's get into it. Replacing the dough in doughnuts. But before we get into our weird and wacky prompts, let's go ahead and doodle a normal donut. Hopefully, unlike the snowman video, we can stick to a normal, sort of control group designed donut. So what started off as a plain donut in my mind, I'm thinking a vanilla donut with pink icing, colorful sprinkles, you know, a normal classic donut. That was my original plan going into this illustration, but of course I had to put a fun twist on it. No other reason other than drawing a plain normal donut is just kind of boring, and as an artist I like to have fun when I create things, so my thought was creating this weird twisty infinity sort of donut. What started off as a single video where I created a snowman but created him out of things other than snow kind of developed into a sort of interesting creative exercise for me to take something regular, something we think of as plain, and put a twist on it. And I guess this is just a way for me to get creative and exercise my creativity. Plus, I'm going through a bit of an art block right now, so this was a really fun, simple project for me to try to get myself creative and get those juices flowing. Overall, like I said, it is just a normal donut. It just happens to be twisted up in a figure 8 a little bit, kind of weird. I mean, nothing super crazy. I did have a lot of fun playing around with the intense shadows and the purples with the Posca Pens. They are always so much fun to play around with. That's why I do choose Posca Pens for these projects, because we do sort of draw things that are kind of normal, kind of plain, but we can always depend on Posca Pens to add that sort of pop of color, simplified yet exaggerated shapes, and of course the color. I love the colors with Posca Pens. You can draw an ordinary donut but create these crazy shadows and pops of colors here and there, and it makes just a normal donut something somewhat interesting. I mean, of course, ignoring the fact that this donut is in a figure 8 shape, which was really fun to make, and of course making the dripping pink icing a little bit more exaggerated than what you would find on a donut. Overall, I just had a lot of fun trying to make something a little bit boring into something a little bit more fun. Obviously, there's just a little bit more personality in this regular plain donut. Let me know in the comments on a scale from 1 to 10, how bad do you want a donut now? So now that we have our control group donut created, I'm excited to see what we create with our interesting prompts to illustrate donuts created from something other than dough. So here is our finished quote-unquote normal donut. I went in a very fun but pretty normal donut-y route. So now that we have our basic donut out of the way, let's get into drawing some of these silly nut prompts. And our first donut is going to be, we have ground nut. So despite not even being a nut, it being a legume, peanuts are considered a ground nut. So a ground nut is basically just a nut that grows in the ground, to no one's surprise. So if I didn't explain what we are doing well enough, if you are still confused, what I'm doing is, because the word donut is just so weird, it's a donut. It's not a nut. It is dough, but it's not a nut. I thought it would be a very silly prompt to take other words that end with nut and design a donut inspired by that word. So we have our first word, we have ground nut. So basically I'm designing a donut inspired by the word ground nut. So basically I guess I'm just designing a ground donut. So trying to think of a donut. So when you think of donut, you think of a circular thing with a hole in it. And this donut it's quite a stretch. It's more of a tube, I suppose. Think of a very tall donut. So maybe we have a stack of 3 or 4 donuts, but instead of being a stack of donuts, it's just a very long or tall donut. And that donut is topped with green icing to resemble grass. And then throughout this donut, we have layers of chocolate and vanilla, and then maybe some more chocolate, and then some fossils and some rocks, because why not? It's a ground donut. So basically, this donut resembles the layers of earth in the ground, and honestly, it just looks like a cylinder that was taken out of the ground. It doesn't even look like a donut. But hey, I guess that's what happens when you take the ground and turn it into a donut. It doesn't really look like a donut anymore. Despite it not looking like a donut anymore, I do think this illustration turned out really fun, really colorful. I really enjoyed the process of this one. I think it's just really fun. Even if it doesn't look like a donut anymore, I am going to count this one as a success. And hey, let me know if you catch the Easter egg in this illustration. I'll give you a hint. It's a video game I've been playing a lot lately. And that is our ground nut. So here is our finished ground donut, if you can really call it that. Do you see the donut? Let me know if this was a successful donut or not. I still really like the illustration, so pretty cool. Let's move on. All right, our next donut pun is going to be, we have a candle nut. So this is definitely a really good example at how these donut illustrations just don't turn out, but at the same time, as an artist, I had a lot of fun creating them, so do I care that much? Nah. So the basic idea behind this candle nut is that I wanted to create a rectangular donut to resemble a candlestick, and then I also wanted to have dripping icing to resemble, obviously, the melting wax on top of a candle. So instead of taking our classic round donut with a hole in it, I made this into a, what are they called? Long john? No. Long john. It's a long john. You know, those really long rectangular donuts that have, I think, like cream inside of them, and they usually have chocolate icing on top, or what is it, look, I'm not a donut expert. Basically, instead of having a strip of icing or whatever on top of this long john, I had this long john, how many times can I say long john? I had this donut dipped into icing to, again, resemble the melting wax of a candle. So we have our long john dipped in icing to resemble a candle. It basically just kind of looks like a candle, not a donut at all. And then a single sprinkle at the very top to represent the candle wick, and then we just catch that donut on fire. Originally, I thought it would be really fun to create texture in the fire by adding a bunch of red, yellow, and orange sprinkles, but then I had so much fun with the simple round and overlapping circles to represent the fire that I just thought these sprinkles would add too much busy, unnecessary texture that I didn't think was necessary. So this is our very simple illustration of a candle nut, which, by the way, what's a candle nut? A candle nut is a large tree native to southeastern Asia. The nuts yield oil used in varnishes. Nut kernels strung together are used locally as candles. We are learning a lot about nuts, you guys. Let me tell you, I learned a lot about a lot of different sort of nuts that I don't even end up drawing, but it was really interesting to find out about all these nuts. Anyways, there's our candle nut donut. Another abstract take on a donut. We have our candle nut done. Like I said, a bit of an abstract take on a donut. I do think it was really fun to work on, even though you can barely tell it's a donut, if at all. But let's work on the next one. What's it going to be? Let's find out. We have thumb nut. What's a thumb nut, you ask? Well, I don't know. I looked it up and I forgot. Is this our first and only nut that isn't an actual nut, like a plant? This thing is like a nut and bolt, you know, like a nut, like a nut. Anyways, is this my excuse to draw some sort of resemblance of gore in this video? Oh yes, absolutely it is. So when I saw thumb nut, it was the only word that resembled some sort of body part or something that wasn't a color or another object that was just a thing and not a living thing. That's not true. Pig nut's also in here. Will I draw pig nut? Stay tuned. So obviously, as you can see at this point, I took this opportunity to take the inspiration from the word thumb, and I created a donut that resembled a hand. So I guess it's sort of similar to a bear claw sort of donut where we have a round dough-like thing with slits in it to resemble fingers. But of course we do have to have that protruding thumb because the whole point of this donut is the word thumb. So like I said, yes, this was an excuse to draw gore, so I wanted to make this into a jelly-filled donut so that the jelly could resemble blood and guts. Oh yes. And to just really push that idea home, we have a bone sticking into this donut, which we will say resembles... I don't want it to just be a stick of some sort because that would be really lame. I want it to be something edible, but I can't really think right now of what an edible white food is that isn't just some sort of sugary powder. Anyways, basically we have this chocolate flavored hand-shaped donut, jelly filled to resemble guts spilling out and a bone sticking into it for fun. I think this one turned out really simple yet really cute. I just love the idea of this one. And that is our thumb nut donut. Again, we have yet another donut that is a bit of a stretch. Sort of like a bear claw, but I think it turned out really cute. I like the shiny jelly. The hand aspect was really cute. So let's move on to our next donut and see what we get. Let's get in there. All right, and we have Earthnut. Not to be confused with groundnut, which now that I think about it, these two sound very similar together because ground and earth I think are very interchangeable words. But when I think ground, I very specifically think of the ground, whereas earth can very much also mean plants, which is the route I took. Now this donut ended up being the most simple, and I am a little disappointed with how simple this one turned out, but the idea was there, I suppose. So earthnut can actually mean ground nut, but it can also mean fungus, apparently. See, I'm telling you guys, we're learning things. So as you can already see, earthnut, I wanted to go in a plant direction, and obviously I had to think about what donuts already kind of looked like. So I kind of went in the same direction as the Long John again. So I went with that fat, rectangular, and filled donut route, except this time, instead of having it just a rectangular shape, we do have some shapely roots at the bottom to represent the roots of a tree. Then I stuck some pretzels in it to resemble some additional branches to come off of this tree, and then the filling is supposed to resemble the inside of the tree, so the outside, the chocolate flavored actual donut bit is the bark of the tree, and then the inside filling that's coming out is supposed to resemble the actual wood of the tree, if that makes any sense. At the end of this illustration, I thought it was just looking very brown, very sad, and just kind of plain and boring, so I added some grass icing at the bottom around the donut and some grass green sprinkles to represent grass, and it did liven it up a little bit, but in the end I think this one was just a little bit too plain, a little bit boring. Sorry, Earthnut. Maybe next time. Yes, I could have just done a circular donut and made it look like Earth, but that's boring. So that is that for our Earthnut. A little bit on the simple side, especially compared to the others, but I still think it turned out sort of cute. And with that, let's get our last donut going. Let's see what we've got. And last but not least, we have a beech nut. To no one's surprise, a beech nut comes off of a tree from the beach. There you go, beech nut. So the idea of this beech nut donut is kind of something, I guess, that could exist. Basically, I just decorated a donut to look like a beach, which is very well something that could definitely exist in this world. I guess it just depends on how much effort you want to put into decorating donuts. So to create contrast of a sandy beach, I created a chocolate donut, but the sand color is just, oh gosh, it's just so light that you can barely see it. In fact, I did have quite a bit of trouble putting down that light color because I could barely see what I was doing on the paper, even in person, but we got through it. So I do really like the contrast of that chocolate donut and the sandy, probably coconut flavored icing on top of this donut. Topped it with some chocolate pieces to represent coconuts. Put a pool of blue icing in the middle to represent obviously the ocean. We did have to get some blue in there. And as tempting as I was to make the icing itself blue, I did really think we needed that sand. And I thought it would be really cute to have a pool of water in the center of this donut. And just because I wanted to draw a palm tree, I just stuck a palm tree on that donut and called it a day. This was also the first time that I broke out my brush and water to create a different tone or a different color in this illustration. I think I was just lacking in various darks and lights when it came to the tan colors, so there wasn't a lot of separation between the tree and the sand. It did add some nice texture to the tree, and overall this one, it's a little simple, a little sloppy, but I think it turned out pretty cute, nice and colorful. By far my favorite part of this illustration are the coconuts. I just really like the combination of the brown and the red I used to shade. It looks really nice, and the coconuts are just really cute with those three little dots. I don't know what it is, I just find that detail to be the most adorable in this illustration. I don't know, the coconuts are cute. And there's our beech nut donut. So here it is, our final donut, our beech nut. Maybe it didn't turn out the way I wanted it to, but it's still pretty colorful and cute. So there are all 6 of our donut creations. Very abstract, very silly, but very fun. I hope you guys enjoyed this video. Thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you in the next one. Stay golden and stay promoted. With Squarespace, you have the perfect website to not only display your art in a portfolio, but also have an online shop. If you're just starting off as an artist or you're already an established brand, the Squarespace Commerce platform supports the way you do business. Squarespace offers a number of customizable galleries and add password-protected pages to share private work with clients. That is so cool. And don't worry, with 24/7 email support, Squarespace is there for you 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. Head to squarespace.com/CaseyGolden to save 10% off your first purchase of a website or domain using code CaseyGolden. Thank you so much to Squarespace for sponsoring this video. I'll see you guys in the next one. Bye!